Gallup has an interesting poll out about the effect of alcohol on families. So they simply ask the question, has drinking ever been a cause of trouble in your family? Very broad. You can interpret that in many different ways, as I'm sure people did. But what's undeniable is the trend in the poll. So you could see there, for whatever reason, from 1946 until 1975-ish, it was relatively steady, holding between 10 and 20%, right? It bottomed out at about 12% there, 12% of people saying alcohol had a negative effect on their family. And then it shot up. It shot up to over 20%, and then it steadily rose from there. And today, it's at an all-time high. 36% of the American people say drinking has been a cause of trouble in their families. So when you ask the question slightly differently, they got an even worse result. So to the statement, alcohol has been a cause of family trouble, again, that's slightly different, 49% of people say alcohol has been a cause of family trouble. People that say alcohol has not been a cause of family trouble, 66%. Okay? And it holds relatively steady for people who drink alcohol on occasion and people who abstain from alcohol. About 50% of people who don't drink alcohol and do drink alcohol say it's been a cause of family trouble. Isn't that amazing? So here we have a drug where up to 50% of people say, this shit fucked up the family. And nobody considers banning it. Nobody. I mean, there was a time, obviously, back with Prohibition when they did ban it briefly, and then people said, you ain't doing that shit, reverse it. Okay? Well, now nobody bats an eyelash. Everybody's like, well, obviously, this is what a free society does. You drink alcohol. You come home from work, you have a Corona, maybe you have a tequila, Jack and Coke. What's your pleasure? Whatever. I got a bar. Let's go mix some drinks together, no? 50% of families, it fucked up the family. And everybody's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. We accept that. We accept that. Now, imagine if they asked this question for weed. What would the result be? Even let's assume weed were legal. What do you think the result would be in that situation? Would 50% of people say it fucked up the family? No, it wouldn't. But a lot of people want it banned anyway. And I mean, when you really stop and think about it, to anybody who actually understands their substances and their drugs, you get that alcohol, sometimes it does lead to problems. I mean, if you drive by a strip of bars at 3 o'clock in the morning, here in New York, you'll see quite a few fights. You'll see quite a few jealous boyfriends or girlfriends, or people crying, or people drunk dialing. And it's a mess. It's a mess. It's a mess. Not saying I dislike alcohol. In fact, I actually enjoy it very much, right? But objectively speaking, the symptoms, if you will, of alcohol, not too pretty. But when it comes to marijuana, I mean, all the old stereotypes and jokes and cliches are totally true. You know what you do? You eat some cookie doughs, plural. I don't even know if that makes sense. You eat some cookie dough and some Cheetos. That's why I added the S, because I wanted to say Cheetos too. And you watch some SpongeBob SquarePants and reruns of Family Matters, maybe Full House. Take a little trip back to the 1990s in your mind as you travel through the universe with the weed you just smoked, relaxed, sitting on your couch, comatose, and then you go to sleep. It really relaxes you. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people, myself included, every once in a while when I've smoked marijuana, I get paranoid. It happens in a small percentage of people, right? But even if you take the strictest, most conservative view and the most negative view of marijuana and look objectively at marijuana and alcohol is still worse. But one is legal and one is illegal. Look, it just goes to show you that the origins of the drug war, it was never based on science. That's what people don't get, man. Like, people naively think, well, the reason why certain drugs are banned and certain drugs are legal is purely because there was a scientific consensus and a committee that sat down in 1932 or whenever and said, well, this one is good, we'll allow this one is bad, we'll allow that one only for prescription. Do we agree? Dr. Stevenson, do you agree? That never happened. That never happened. In fact, if you read the history of the origins of the drug war, a lot of it has to do with racism. For example, opium used to be legal. Well, guess what happened? When the Chinese immigrants who were building the railroads, they would have opium dens and they would smoke it. Well, the white guys were afraid that their daughters would go into the opium dens with the Chinese men and get high on the opium and then have sex with them. So they banned it. Isn't that amazing? It's amazing when you know the history of this stuff. Obviously, marijuana. Why is that banned? Well, it's the substance that in the past was more predominantly enjoyed by people that had darker skin. So when you look at the history of it, you go, oh, a lot of this is arbitrary. It has to do with social control, and it has to do with racism. So for us to sit here today and act like prohibition is a rational policy based on science, it's an idiotic policy. Whatever happened to the idea of freedom? Okay, we accept it with alcohol. We accept it with Red Bull and Monster Energy. You can go to the doctor and get a Xanax prescription fairly easily, right? That's a drug. That's a drug. A kid died of a caffeine overdose recently. Is anybody talking about banning caffeine? No. But we pick and choose which things we want legal, not based on science, but based on visceral opinion and based on the things that we laid out before. No, you should be able to put in your body whatever you want to put in your body as long as you're not hurting anybody else. Okay? There's a non-violent, victimless crime is not a crime at all. Okay? Let's actually have freedom. I'm tired of politicians using the word freedom and talking about the Constitution in this flippant, nonchalant way, but then totally disregarding what the Constitution demands. One of those things, not just laid out in the Constitution, but the fucking Magna Carta in 1215, is this idea that your house is your castle and your body is your temple. And the government should not intrude on those things. This isn't that hard to figure out.